Welcome to this video, which I'm calling Can You Keep a Secret? When creating a web application, there is almost always information that can be considered to be secret. Examples of this type of information are API keys, connection strings for databases, and product keys, amongst others. For Blazor applications, how these secrets are going to be kept needs to be considered from the very start of a project. This is particularly so if the code is going to be put into source control. I'm thinking of GitHub in this case. If source control isn't going to be used and the application is only ever going to be run locally as a personal project, then safeguarding secrets is not absolutely vital. But in all other cases, it should be a top priority. In a Blazor application, the default place to store database connection strings, API keys, etc. is in appsettings.json. But the big problem is that appsettings.json is included with other files when committing to GitHub for the first time. In theory, one can add appsettings.json to .gitignore, but by that stage it is too late. Appsettings.json has already been committed to the repository, and undoing it is not straightforward. I know, I've done it more than once, but not more than twice. We'll look at the problem by creating a very basic application, storing secrets in app settings, and then reading them back and displaying them on the screen. Let's make a start. Using Visual Studio 2022, we'll create a new Blazor web app. So create a new project, and we'll use Blazor web app. I'll give it a name. I'll click next, and I'm going to leave framework as .NET 8, authentication type none, configure for HTTPS I'll leave ticked, but in interactive render mode I'll set it to server, and interactivity location global, and I'll include the sample pages. Now the first thing I'm going to do is change app settings. And I'm going to replace what we've got there with this. So what I've done is I've added a section called connection strings, and the default of my production connection string, and then a section called my secrets, and I've got two secrets in there, secret 1 and secret 2. I'm now going to do something similar for appsettings.development. If you click on the icon next to appsettings.json, we'll see appsettings.development. This is basically the same structure, but I've now got in here my development connection string and secret 1 from appsettings.development. So when we display the secrets, we'll know where they're coming from. And to demonstrate this, I'm going to make some changes to the home page. So under components, pages, home, I'm going to replace totally what we've got here with this code. And briefly, this code injects the iConfiguration interface, allowing us to use the built-in configuration methods, which can read appsettings.json, secrets.json, etc. It's got a button that's with a description of get my secret and an on-click method called get my secret. And we've then got the placeholder for the secret when it's obtained. And then the code is simply getting the value of the string my secrets : secret 1 from wherever. The double question mark here is called the null coalescing operator and is used to return a value to the right, i.e. not found, if the value to the left is null. And that can be quite a useful operator. Anyway, we'll save all the files and run the application. The application runs, and if I click Get My Secret, we'll see that secret 1 is coming from appsettings.development.json. We'll contrast this a little later with secrets that come from elsewhere. As mentioned earlier, we might not want to save secrets in either of the appsettings.json files. An alternative to this, in development only, is to use secrets.json. To add secrets to secrets.json, right-click on the project name and go to Manage User Secrets. This will open up another JSON file into which we can copy some code. Let me copy this. So it looks pretty much like the app settings.files, but we've got sections for my secrets and connection strings, and it's just saying it's coming from secrets.json. Now, just for information, if we look in the project file, we'll see that we've now got this section that says user secrets ID and then a GUID. That GUID is the key to file location where you can actually find the JSON file. I'll just paste the root in here. So it's in app data, Microsoft user secrets, and then you substitute that string for here and then secrets.json. But I can get rid of that. We don't need it. So now if we run the application again and we click Get My Secret, we'll see now it's coming from secrets.json. So what's the hierarchy while we're in development? Well, it's this. So in development, the system will look in, first of all, secrets.json, and if it's not found there, the system will look in appsettings.development.json, and if nothing is found there, it'll look in appsettings.json. So let's just do a few experiments just to show that's correct. What I'm going to do now is edit each of secrets.json, appsettings.development.json, and appsettings, changing the key name secret1 to say secret s. So let's look at secrets.json to start with. I'll just change that to secret x and run it. And with nothing in secrets, we should find it's coming from secrets.development, which it is. So I'll close that. Go to appsettings.development and change secret1 there to secret x. Run it again. And now we see it's coming from appsettings.json. And lastly, if I change appsettings.json, we should find it says not found, which it has done. So let's close that, and I'll change all those back to secret1. So what will happen if we publish the application? Because obviously secrets.json is not included in the publication. So let's see what happens there. I've got an Azure subscription. It's a basic pay-as-you-go account. So I'm going to publish the application to Azure Web Services. Once an Azure account has been created, publication can be accomplished from within Visual Studio 2022 completely. But before I begin the process, there are some things you just need to make sure of. And it's to make sure you're using the same Microsoft account in Visual Studio as you are in Azure. So if you click on your user ID up here, you'll see that I'm logged in as Christopher Bell at blazorcode.uk. But just as importantly, if you go to Tools, Options, and down at the bottom here, we'll find Azure Service Authentication. account selection, that's got to be the same one. And just as an aside, for anyone from Microsoft who happens to be looking, how does Azure Service Authentication work? That sends you some outdated documentation. So don't bother looking at that. It's wrong. Okay, so let's see about publishing it. And it's really very easy. We select, right-click on here and select Publish. And we then go through this wizard. We want it to go to Azure. We want a Windows, Azure App Service Windows. And I haven't got any app services at the moment, so I click Create New. And it'll come up with a name, and it'll put today's date on the end of that. Probably best to get rid of that. It has to be unique across Azure, I think. So that looks if it's okay. Select your subscription. Select a resource group. It's going to create one by default, but I'm going to create one that I know the name of. I'm just going to call it Blazor Code Secrets Resource Group. And this is the important one. Click New here, because that is S1 level. There are some charges. But if we choose, I'll rename it to start with. I'm going to leave the location as East US. For some reason, my account seems to be based there. But this is the important bit. On here, make sure you select the free one. And then click OK. And click Create. I think this will take a little time, so I'll probably cut this out of the video. Well, I think that took a couple of minutes, but now it's come back with this. We now click Finish. And it creates a profile, and then close. Next stage is to click Publish. Again, this may take a few minutes, and if it does so, I'll cut it out of the video. But when it's finished, it's going to create this website here, and it should open automatically. Much to my relief, it's opened. So if I click Get My Secrets, we'll see it's coming from appsettings.json. I'm going to say the important part here is that the secret is coming from appsettings.json in preference to both appsettings.development.json and secrets.json. But the problem with secrets.json is that it doesn't get published. The problem with appsettings.json is that there is a risk that any secret could be exposed in source control unless steps are taken to prevent it. A better option is probably Azure Key Vault. And before I go down that route, a few words about Azure Key Vault. Obviously, to use it, you need an Azure account, although a free account is sufficient, but there will be costs eventually, although they'll be very minimal. Azure Key Vault can store 3 types of entity: secret, keys, and certificates. To store secrets, such as connection strings, API keys, and product licenses, it is only necessary to use Azure Key Vault secrets. If using just secrets, the costs are fairly minimal. I think these are about 3 pence per 10,000 transactions. And I'm going to ignore the cost of keys and certificates, as I won't be using these. You'll need to look at the Azure website for details. Let me close the application and go back to the code. There are 2 ways of adding an Azure Key Vault, either to go through Visual Studio or directly in the Azure portal. I think, on the whole, the simplest method is through Visual Studio. So we're going to use that method here. And I'm going to close some of these other files to give a clean slate. Right, so what we need to do is right-click on Connected Services, select Add, and Azure Key Vault. It comes up with our subscription, make sure that's the right one, and then click Create New. It's coming up with a name, that's fine. In fact, I might give it a capital V. Subscription name, that's fine. It's selecting this resource group, which I think is the one we've created earlier. And the location, I'm going to go for East US just to keep everything in the same place. And the SKU, leave as standard. The option there is premium, but we don't need that. And then click Create. If this takes a long time, I'm going to shorten the video by taking this step out. Right, it's now done that, and we can see we've got a key vault here. Now select Next. And what we need to do is just make a note of this connection string. So it'll be something fairly obvious. It's not that secret. It's just the vault with .vault azure.net. So copy that and put it in Notepad. And then click Next. It tells us what's going to happen. So it's going to change some code. It's going to add a couple of NuGet packages. It's going to create this application store dependency, and it's going to make some changes to launch settings. Click Finish. This again may take a little while. Yeah, I was lucky it didn't. Click Close. So that adds the Azure Key Vault. And if we save all the files, we should be able to run the application locally. So try that before we go any further. Again, much to my relief, that's run. It's running locally. And if we click Get My Secret, we'll see it's coming from secrets.json, which is what we should expect. I had terrible trouble the first time I tried to do this, and I think it was caused by my Azure accounts. Somehow I've ended up with two accounts, probably caused by me having two Microsoft accounts at one point in time. A personal Microsoft 365 account, which I'd cancelled by this point in time, and another Microsoft 365 Business Standard subscription. No matter what I did, I couldn't resolve the problem. And in the end, I had to cancel and delete both Azure subscriptions and start again. Fortunately, I didn't have any critical applications in Azure, otherwise this would have been a bit of a pain. Anyway, that's just a warning. So make sure you've got the correct Azure account. The next stage is to add the secrets to Azure Key Vault. So open the Azure portal and select Key Vaults. This happens to be in my recent ones. And we can see here the Blazor Code Secrets Vault. Click on that. And in here, we can see we've got objects, keys, secrets, and certificates. Select Secrets. We haven't got anything in here, so we'll generate / import. We're going to give it a name, and I'm going to call it Azure Secret. And I'm going to give it a value. I think I've typed in there secret 1 from Azure Key Vault. We don't need to fill anything in here. I'm not going to tick either of those. I'm just going to click Create. Having created the secret, we now go back into Visual Studio. To get a secret from Azure Key Vault, we need one NuGet package that wasn't installed as part of the automatic process. So if we go to Tools, NuGet Package Manager, and Manage NuGet Packages, we can see that we had these two installed when we added the Key Vault, but we want another one. So browse for the one we want. And it's Azure Security Key Vault Secrets. Select that and install. And I see I've got an update here. Let's have a look at that. And it's to one of those ones that were installed automatically, so I'm just going to update it. We now need to record the location of the Azure Key Vault in app-settings.json. So to start with, we'll go to app-settings.json and we'll add this section where we need to replace your Key Vault URI with the actual Key Vault URI. So to do that, go to Key Vaults, select it, and on the overview item, we'll see the Vault URI here. Copy that, go back to Visual Studio, and just replace your Key Vault URI in here. Now we need to make some changes to the home page as well. So I'm going to read the secret from the Key Vault. The first thing we need to do is to add some using statements at the top. And I need to change the get my secret method. And I've changed it to this. A brief explanation of this code is probably called for. We've injected iConfiguration so we can use the built-in interface to get the value of the Key Vault URL from app-settings.json, which we've just added. Next, we declare a variable and assign the Azure credential to it, and it's called default Azure credential, and that's most important. We are using the Azure Security Key Vault.secrets to create a new secret client, passing into it the Key Vault URL obtained above and the default Azure credential. This credential relies at this stage in development on you being logged into your Visual Studio with the same credentials as you use for Azure. Otherwise, we'll hit problems. Step 4 is to create a Key Vault secret object using the client.getSecret method, passing in the name of the Azure Key Vault secret. And the last step is to assign the value of the secret to the string variable we use on the form. Now, with these changes, we should be able to run the application locally. It should work, and we're going to be clicking Get My Secret, but it's going to be slow. So I'll probably shorten this sequence. So it's run, and I'm now going to click Get My Secret. This again is going to be slow because it's going to get the secret from the Azure Key Vault. And it succeeded. And I typed in secret 1 from Azure Key Vault, and I misspelt that, but I'll live with that. So what would happen if we tried to republish? We'd hit 2 problems. Let's close that. The default Azure credential is not available to the app once it's published, i.e. our Visual Studio Azure credentials. To get around this problem, we'll create a managed identity in Azure. There are more complex approaches, but I'm not proposing to explore those. Frankly, I've had enough trouble with this. And then when adding Azure Key Vault from within Visual Studio, some code was added to program CS to allow us to run the application locally. And that will now interfere with the process if we publish. But first of all, let's look at creating a managed identity. And to do that, we log into the Azure portal. And I'm going to go to Home. And what we're looking for here is the web application. So if I click Web Services, we should see our application here. And here we should find identity. And we've got system assigned and user assigned. System assigned is what we want. If this isn't on already, you'll need to click on and save and then reopen. But this information here, the object principal, is what we need. So copy that to the clipboard. And I'm just going to also put that in Notepad. And then we need to return to the home part of the portal and browse to the Key Vault. And in the left-hand side here, we've got access policies. Make sure you select this and not access control. I was misled by quite a lot of the documentation into this section. It isn't. It's access policies that you want. Select that. And we now click Create. We want to create a new access policy. And we've got 3 columns: keys, secrets, and certificates. It's only secrets we're interested in. And all we need to do is get and list our secrets. So make sure you tick those 2. Click Next. And this is where that copied ID comes from. So paste it into here. And we should find our app appearing here. Select that so it's selected down at the bottom here. Then click Next. Click Next again and Create. And we should see our application appear here. Back in Visual Studio, we need to look at program.cs. And these 2 lines here were the lines that were put in by the system when we added the Azure Key Vault. If we publish the code at the moment, it'll fail because it won't be able to resolve this. So to avoid this problem, I suggest commenting out these 2 lines. I think that's all we need. I'll come back to program.cs a little bit later, but that should be all that's needed. Now, before I publish, I'm just going to check that it still runs locally. This will take a little time, as I've said before, but it should run. And it does. So that's good. It's running locally and it's getting the secret from the Azure Key Vault. So I'll close that. So now we can republish. So if we go to the project, select Publish, we've already got our profile set up. So all we need to do is click Publish. And again, I think it should open when it completes. And it has. So now if I click Get My Secret, first of all, it should be a lot quicker than when run locally. So let's just test it. Well, it wasn't that quick, but it was relatively quick. Fine, so I'll close that again. And I'm going to go back to Visual Studio, because there's one last thing I will explain. I've used home.razor to retrieve and display secrets. In most applications, license keys, API keys, and connection strings are read into the application at startup using program.cs. And as an aside, this will reduce the number of visits to the Azure Key Vault, so minimizing costs if you're going anywhere near 10,000 transactions. Now, to read secrets in program CS, I'm going to input some template code in here just for future reference. And so I've got this Key Vault URL, which is again reading the Key Vault URL from app settings. I'm using the default Azure credential. I'm adding it to the builder, and then I'm saying get my connection string from builder configuration get section, and I've got Azure connection string in there. As I haven't got a secret called Azure connection string, I'm just going to change that back to Azure secret. And save it. Save all the files, and I'll just publish one more time and just check that it still runs. And it does. And it will get my secret. So that's great. I did add something to program.cs in that code that might be worth mentioning, and that is that I've put an exclamation mark after the value here. The exclamation operator is used as the null forgiving operator. It is, quote, a postfix operator that has no effect at runtime, but tells the compiler to disregard null safety checks for the associated expression. And that's the explanation I got from Copilot. Just as an aside. I think that finishes this particular video. I'll put in the description some links to resources that I had to use in this video. It's been a lot longer than I intended, so please forgive me if this is a bit longer than usual, but I hope you'll find it useful. Thank you very much for watching, and there will be other videos coming along. Thank you very much.